Well, hey, podcast listeners, I'm TJ.
And I'm Julie.
And in episode 60 of the Pixar Post podcast, we're going to continue our discussion surrounding our trip to Pixar for the Incredibles 2 press event. And this time we're going to talk about creating the worlds of Incredibles 2.
Ooh.
Looking at the house, the cities, the wonderful descriptions that come along with the development team, of why they chose the materials they used, and so on and so forth. So you guys are in for a treat. This is the clearest I've ever experienced getting a description of what a production designer does, the shading art director, the previs team, and then the sets department. Mm-hmm. Like, it's the cleanest, most easily describable, I guess, description.
Yeah.
that we've heard. Yeah, that we've heard. It's great. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. It's a just over 40-minute interview that we had. And that's cutting out all like the technical stuff and all those other kind of things. So it was like an hour originally, or a little less than that. But it was a great session. So we really hope you guys enjoy it. But before we dive into that too deep, we're not going to do trivia this time. We're actually just going to, because of the length of that interview, we're going to talk about so much stuff is coming out for Incredibles 2. Mm-hmm. Everything from merchandise to screenings for the film. So what do you say we chat about some of these things first?
Okie dokie.
All right. So we have a little bit of a Incredibles 2 PSA, public service announcement, if you will, first. So if you're not already chatting with other people in the Pixar Post forum, you should be. So there's some fun conversations going on regarding Incredibles 2. So people sharing bus stop posters that they're seeing.
Yes.
Which is pretty cool. Even some debate going on as far as some questions or inconsistencies with the film. We're going to talk about one of those a little bit later. Like, for instance, one of them is people are wondering why the first film and the second film all of a sudden shift cities. So when the first film ends, we're leaving that, and that is in Metroville. Mm-hmm. So Dash's race, Metroville City is where they live. When the new film starts, it's literally like, boom, Underminer pops up from underground. In the background, you see it's no longer Metroville. It says that they're in Municeburg. So it's the same stadium right outside the school where Violet's bumping into Tony Ridinger and all that kind of stuff. Why all of a sudden did they switch cities? So it's interesting. So anyway, some of these discussions are what's going on out there. People are sharing, some of the teasers and TV spots and all those kind of things. So just it's a fun community, and we definitely want to continue to support it and get people to jump over there, just because the conversations are good, the information that's shared is good, and it's a lot of fun. So if you haven't checked it out, just go to pixarpost.com and click on the forum button, or go to forum.pixarpost.com. You can feel free to check that out wherever it's convenient for you. But let's now also talk about the soundtrack.
Yes.
So we're pretty excited about
favorite.
this. Yeah. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just saying we love the soundtracks of Pixar films.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, generally there's just like a handful of, composers.
Yeah, there are, yeah.
That Pixar works with. And Michael Giacchino, we are fans.
He is back, yes. So his first feature-length film that he did some Medal of Honor work for a game and some other things before this, but his first feature-length film was the first Incredibles. So this is pretty cool that he's going to be welcomed back, because think about how much is different now. Mm-hmm. He just completed the latest Jurassic World.
Oh, I mean, he did, what, Star Wars?
Yeah, I mean, he's done so many different things now, and to think that his first feature-length film was the first Incredibles is really neat.
Right.
So,
well, he did Lost before that, right?
Yeah, but feature-length film.
Yeah, feature.
Like, so that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, he did Lost. Lost was kind of concurrent with that. Because Lost was like right at the very beginning. I think that was like that 2003-04 time frame. Yeah, it was starting around there. Because it ended,
I think, 10 years ago.
It had to be more than that. Well, no, you're probably about right.
Yeah, because it was like 8 seasons,
right?
I think. Like that.
Right. Yeah, so it was early 2000s that it was like a big deal, that everybody was talking about it. Early to mid.
Yeah.
But anyways, it's just cool that he's coming back, and he's gonna. It's almost like when you think of like Toy Story, it has to be Randy Newman.
Yes.
When you think of Finding Nemo, Finding Dory, it has to be Thomas Newman. Right. So there's these correlations that go together, and Michael
Well, you had noted that, like, his score, Michael's score, is more of like a upbeat, like jazzier take on some of the old compositions from Incredibles.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So what's interesting though is somebody had commented in the forum that they think that clip that was actually in what you're referencing is the newest teaser that was out.
Right.
That had the music in it, and somebody said that's actually from the video game that he recorded.
Oh.
That he also did that. I don't know, because we don't have it to reference. We had to look into that actually. But regardless, that's what we've been hearing anyways. That it's like, a more upbeat, jazzed up version of the last one, which is like, the the Bond films from the 60s and all that kind of stuff. It's got that 60s futuristic feel, just like the visuals of the movie do. But one of the things we always like are his punny titles.
Yes.
So we got the list was originally on Film Music Reporter, but we ended up putting it in our post as well. So it's not on, the list isn't on Amazon or Barnes & Noble yet as far as the tracks. So if you haven't seen them and you're not avoiding spoilers, and I should say really anything we're going to talk about in this interview, although nothing's super revealing about the plot, there still could be things. So if you're avoiding spoilers, watch out. But a couple of these song titles, the punny song titles, A Bridge Too Par instead of A Bridge Too Far, Together and Forever.
Yes.
Instead of Together and Forever, which is great. A Dash of Reality. And then he also did In Credits again.
Aha.
So I've had this discussion with other people that no composer would ever name the song the same two things.
Right.
But I guess there's a technicality here, because in the first film, when he does the end credits song, he calls it the In Credits. This one is just called
In Credits.
Right. So is that the same thing? Are we assuming are we calling it the same thing?
No, it's different. Well, because it's not, this film's not called The Incredibles 2.
Darn it, you're right.
It's
That's probably
Incredibles
exactly
2.
why he did it.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of.
I didn't.
Well, that's why I'm here.
That's right. So we're excited to hear how some of those puns come into play when we see the visuals of the film, too. Mm-hmm. That's certainly what he's known for. I wonder if he has like a writing team that helps him come up with those. Because after a while, with as many soundtracks as he does, and the amount of time he's got to spend composing, how could he have time to also come up with all these kooky titles?
I don't know. I think he's just kind of like a savant with that. Mm-hmm. I think it just comes to him.
It might. Yeah. We'll have to talk to him and ask him.
I know.
That sounds
I should have asked him during Coco.
Yes, you should have. I'm still jealous about that, by the way. That you were in the same room as him, feet away. But the soundtrack, it actually says on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, it says that the release date is June 29th, which is pretty uncommon because usually it comes out like a week or two before the film.
Right.
Or on the day of the film.
Right.
And so I wonder if my first thought was, is this because of the Brad Bird effect? Like nothing gets out before I want it to be out.
Yeah, and speaking of that, are you surprised at all that we haven't had like a second major trailer?
With basically a week and a half to go.
Like 2 weeks.
2 weeks to go. Yeah, 2 weeks to go. I'm thinking a week and a half because we're going to like the double feature.
Yeah.
And then we'll have an earlier one than that too. But yeah, it is surprising.
There's just been the one. There's been a couple teasers.
Does that mean there's going to be one tomorrow, 2 weeks before?
I don't know.
Which would be Friday.
Well, today's technically 2 weeks.
Friday, June 1st. Oh, because of it's
Thursday.
If they're going to do a 7 p.m. showing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But they still call the release date effectively the 15th.
Friday, yes.
So I'm wondering if tomorrow, on Friday, June 1st, it will be another teaser.
Maybe.
By the time you're listening to this, you'll probably know.
You'll probably know.
Because we're talking about it right now on the evening of the 31st. But I also like the fact that the soundtrack has some theme songs on it. So they're the theme songs from those fake YouTube commercials, which were released for
Frozone, Elastigirl, and Mr. Incredible.
Yep. So those are going to be on there, which is cool. I like the jingly type stuff.
Right. Like
so he's
vintage toy commercials.
Yeah. So he did that for Old Timer, like from
Oh,
Toy
yeah.
Story, that Toy Story of Terror. Like,
Ugh, tuna.
that's still one of our favorite
That's
lines.
one of our favorite.
And if you don't know what we're talking about, it's the old timer is the clock that's in Toy Story of Terror,
Toy Story of Terror. Yep.
the TV special, and he's like a kind of grumpy old man a little bit. So there's like a vintage toy commercial where this little kid is playing with a clock. He puts down like the front of his like bike or his like 3-wheeler tricycle.
Did he do the music for like the "Do No Harm, Cough in Your Arm"?
Ooh, I don't know if he did that. I think he must have, because he did the
Probably, 'cause
whole
he did
special.
yeah.
Right. I know that was written, I think, with Alex Mandel and Mark Walsh.
Oh, okay.
Do no harm, cough in your arm. But anyway, so there's some theme songs on there. One called Chad Tonight Talk Show Theme, and then there's Chad Tonight Newscast Bumper. I can't wait to hear what these are, because we know nothing of what this Chad Tonight is.
Yeah, it'll probably be just like a Jimmy Fallon kind of
Yeah, totally.
talk show.
But if it's going to be like Chad Tonight Talk Show, it sounds like it's going to be like a guest, like probably Mrs. Incredible will be a guest on like Jimmy Fallon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Elastigirl will be a guest. I think that's going to be super cool. So that'll be like the Triple Dent Gum song, I bet. Like his little newscast bumper. It'll be like, tonight. Yeah, like something like that. Mm-hmm. I'm excited. Anything else you're thinking on the soundtrack?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so the next thing I'm going to bring up might spur you to go off on a tangent.
Oh, no. It's late.
JanSport.
Oh. Yes.
Explain what they are.
So
we're talking about other merch that's coming.
Yeah, so this is merchandise. So JanSport, which that was like my backpack of choice growing up as a kid. Mm-hmm. I always had a JanSport, except there was a few years that I rocked a red LL Bean backpack. But when I got a little older, it was just purely JanSport.
Right.
Well, JanSport today released their Incredibles line of merchandise, and holy bananas.
Oh, holy bananas.
There's like 20 prints.
How many are there realistically? There's like 6 or 7?
No, there's like 12, I think.
Okay.
There's quite a bit.
Okay. Yeah, there's one just over Violet. There's one of like the whole family. There's just one with the logo.
One. There's one of Edna. There's
Right.
one of like all the family. Then there's a couple of all the families. Well, I want the black one.
That just has the logo.
That with just the logos.
Right.
Yeah, there's it's like all black backpack, and then there's gray logos all over it, and then a couple of them are the
color versions.
the colorful versions.
Right.
And they're amazing.
Yeah.
And then there's lots of artwork by Eric Tan,
Mm-hmm.
who's the, I believe he works for Disney Consumer Products. He does the artwork there, but his artwork is all over The Incredibles.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's amazing. And we need to buy that backpack tonight.
I need it. But they've been doing a whole bunch of other stuff. Something that's kind of been under the wire a little bit too, that I'm excited for. So like not totally to the same level of excitement that you are over the backpacks, but the Asics shoes.
Yes.
So there's running shoes for men, women, and kids. And the men version, and I think the women version too, not the kids, they have a runner version, and then they have one for like weightlifting and like training. They have other versions of them. And I wish the designs were more bold, but in a way I also appreciate it. Much like I love wearing my Cars 3 New Balance shoes.
Right.
The Vazi Pace shoes. I love those because they're also subtle, so I can wear them to work on like casual days or whatever it might be, or when we go out and nobody knows they're Cars ones unless they look close. But it's the same thing with these Asics ones. So we're going to be doing a post about that coming up. We're going to talk about those some more. Hopefully get a pair to review as well. But they've been doing glass coasters with, again, that artwork from Eric Tan. They're doing a ton of clothing.
Yes.
More so than I think I've seen in other films.
Well, Tina Turk, a designer who does lots of swimwear.
Is it Tina Turk or Tina Twerk or something? I don't know. Tina Turk?
I think it's Tina Turk.
Okay. You're probably better than I am on this.
Yeah, well, she just released a whole Incredibles line of merchandise with bathing suits and some workout gear. It's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of cool stuff. But I think the clothing makes sense this time because of the fact that it's so relatable, because it's people in the film. So I think the idea is that people are going to want to wear clothes like that are mirroring.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I just feel like I've seen more between like tank tops and t-shirts and shorts and workout shirts and swim shirts and swim like bikinis and like there's just a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of apparel.
Yeah,
you're right.
I think it's great.
No, I do too.
Yeah, but I it's cool.
Yeah, but you know what? There's still I guess because there's action figures. Oh, speaking of action figures.
Okay, speak of the action figures.
I just thought of this as I was like talking about it. I really, really hope that we get an action series set released of the wannabe supers.
Oh my gosh. If they don't do that as well as some of the other supers, wink wink.
Yeah.
They need to.
Like Reflux, Screech.
Oh yeah.
Brick, all those
they need to.
Supers.
We just
would be cool. Just like the 6-inch figures, have them in like a 6-pack.
They should all be together. You're right.
They should all be together.
Yeah.
$100, 120.
120 bucks.
I mean, if you make them nice, if like Mattel or somebody or Jakks Pacific or Thinkway, somebody does them right. 6-inch figures, have them like good, like nice.
Yeah, you're not messing around.
I'm not messing around. Yeah, I would pay like $100-$120 for those.
Holy shimolies.
If it was done right, $30 a pop.
All right, I like it.
As long as they were done right.
All right. Yeah, I think that's absolutely great. I would love that. We would absolutely, I'm looking over at our shelf, we would have them proudly displayed right there.
Yeah.
Below our bing bong fathead.
Yeah, 6 to 8 of them could be in a box. Probably 6.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'd also like them to be miniature too. And I would love it if they were along with that Junior Supers line from Jakks Pacific, because I really like that Junior Supers line.
I know you do.
I don't know, there's something about it. But we were talking about this the other day when we were going through the Wiping My Tears Away Toys R Us again.
Oh, I go there every other day.
Yeah, we have to. You got to soak it all in. But we were talking about it the other day that we still feel slighted that there was never a Series 2 of the Coco's Collectibles toys, because we loved those too.
Yeah, I do really like those.
I know, there should have been that. Mm-hmm. Especially since they said Series 1 on it.
Right.
And we got some, characters like MC and things like that in there. I needed more of the family and...
Yeah, but I mean, I guess we did get a lot of the characters, so...
We got a lot, but I want more. I love the mini type figures.
I know you do.
I don't know why. I think it's because I can collect a lot of them and they don't take up a ton of space. Like the Finding Dory ones. I loved those Finding Dory ones.
Oh, yeah.
The ones that were in the, I'm air quoting, blind bags where you could just look at the back and see what it was.
Right.
But I loved those. Those were so cool. And we have the complete set of them. Mm-hmm. But if you get like a big set that's $120, I'm only going to get that one set. I'm not going to get them all.
Right.
But if you get me on the mini train, I'm going to keep buying them.
Yeah, but so you buy both still, though.
Well, we have to.
Yeah.
It's for research. It's for research purposes.
So it's just more stuff.
Exactly. So speaking of those Junior Supers, that line from, again, Jakks Pacific, there's been some Easter eggs that we've been spotting, not only in the trailers, but in the toys. So we saw the Chinese food takeout box that was in the fridge and also on the table.
Yep.
In some of the teasers and trailers that are out there. We saw the A113 on the Hydroliner. Mm-hmm. And then if you haven't seen that, check out our video review of that Hydroliner and you'll be able to see the Easter egg in there. But also, what other Easter eggs are we going to see? So there was an interview that BuzzFeed did with Brad Bird where he talked about, was there going to be a Toy Story 4 Easter egg? And he said, yeah, absolutely. But you're not going to know what it is.
You're not going to know.
Because it's going to be one of those ones that it's going to clearly be a character that we don't know yet.
Kind of like Hank in The Good Dinosaur.
Hank in The Good Dinosaur.
You never would have, first off, if you would have seen him.
Right.
Yeah.
And then second off, you got like things like Doug barking at Remy in the opening sequence of Ratatouille when he's running through.
Yeah, it was just a dog, yeah.
But yeah, like we didn't know that dog
Lotso
had any significance. Yeah, Lotso and Up. You don't know that these things have any significance. So what we're going to have to look for are characters that look like really rendered, really detailed. Because those are the characters that are going to be the ones that are going to be front and center in the new film in Toy Story 4. But it's going to still be almost impossible to like see because you're not going to see them moving.
Right.
So, well, maybe, but anyways, that's just something to keep in mind.
Could be one of Jack's toys or something, maybe.
Yeah. It could be something on a box.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
You never know.
Never know.
But I'm excited. I just love the hunt.
I do too.
So that leaves out the Luxo ball as well as the Pizza Planet truck. So the other things that we're going to have too are plenty of reused elements, which you'll hear in the interview that Nathan Ferris, the set supervisor, talks about. That most of those items, like, we think a lot of things would be reused from movie to movie, but they can't, since A, they were either modeled so long ago or they have to be reworked in some way to fit the new designs. Like, he's like, you can't really just take a table from Andy's room and plop it in to the Incredibles set, because everything in the Incredibles is more angular. Andy's room would be more soft oak and all these other kind of things. So, like, they can't really, a lot of times you just got to redo them, they were talking about. So it's kind of cool.
What's cool is actually on Instagram, we follow a Pixarian. Her name is Christina Farage, and she actually noted that she did the model work on Jack's stroller.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, she said that was like a lot of fun. I believe she did it in one of like her Instagram stories.
Yeah, and she also commented on our post too that said that Nathan, she loved him, and that was her supervisor as well. Yeah. She's like, oh, he's such a nice guy, and he was so great to work with, and all this other kind of stuff. So, yeah, his session, we'll talk about that a little more. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we'll talk a little bit about that too. Before we get to some of the screenings and then the interview, I also want to go back and talk about the art of Incredibles 2 for a quick second, because we had obviously already done the review. It was been out for a little bit. And that would actually contradict the whole Brad Bird holding everything, like the soundtrack. Like, you wouldn't release the art of book, but not the soundtrack. So who knows the reasoning for these release dates fully. But something that I wanted to talk about in there that I haven't seen talked about really anywhere yet was about Teddy Newton. And Teddy Newton was quoted quite a few times throughout the book, and he was brought on as a consultant. So if you look at his IMDb page, the Pixar Wikia, all these different sites that talk about Pixar and Teddy Newton, it still says he's there. But I still don't believe he is. Not only do we see him at Paramount with other people, sure, he could have been touring it because it's a new animation facility, but he did like voices for some other hand-drawn cartoon recently called the Apollo Gauntlet and all these other things. But there's no reason he would be brought on as a consultant if he wasn't at Pixar. So I still think, as much as everybody's still saying he's at Pixar, I don't think he's there. So the one thing I thought was neat is that Brad Bird had talked about that the raccoon fight that happens, or the raccoon scene with Jack, that is actually an idea that Teddy Newton had from the first movie. So that would also be a reason that you would bring him back as a consultant.
Right.
And Brad Bird worked with him on Iron Giant and brought him to Pixar and the whole kind of, that whole...
So they have a history.
They have a history. So I think it would make sense that he would want to bring him back as well. But I thought it was really cool that, maybe he's not there, but he's still being brought back as a consultant. And I just think it's good that, he had... Because his name was all over that first movie as far as the design, the feel... it was soaked into everything. His appeal, especially on all the concept artwork and everything like that. So I thought that was neat that that was mentioned in the book quite a few times. So just something I wanted to throw out there. So if you haven't checked out that book, we have our review of it. Check that out as well. Again, any of these things that we're talking about will be in our show notes. Again, if you need to find those, you just go to pixarpost.com, click on the podcast button, and this is episode 60. You can check them out there. Let's talk about some screening opportunities, because I already said holy chamolis, but I'll say holy chamolis one more time. I think I said holy chamolis last time.
There's lots of screenings.
Yeah, there's lots of opportunities. So Pixar just tweeted out one today. So there's a screening opportunity at IMAX, AMC IMAX theaters in 6 cities. So if you're in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Boston, New York, Washington, D.C., or Miami, head to our site and check that out. You can see the movie on June 6th. So that's next week, 9 days before the June 15th release, or 7 days before the IMAX at AMC also double feature, which is on Wednesday, June 13th. So you can see the first one and then go see the second one right after it. It's a boom back-to-back, which is super cool.
Which you'll be doing.
I'm absolutely going to do. But those other screenings on June 6th, that's great. Los Angeles and San Francisco, I believe, said they were already sold out, so whoops. That's like already today.
I know.
And then, it was just LA, but it says not available. So I don't know if that's sold out or just not available yet.
Right.
You know, you don't know based on verbiage, like not available, it's sold out, or not available, not for sale yet. So then June 3rd through the 24th, there's lots of date options that are sprinkled throughout here for the different cities. If you're a D23 Gold member, there's an Incredibles mixer that's in San Francisco and Phoenix, but those are actually already sold out, so forget those. Bloomington, Minnesota at the Mall of America, Atlanta, Georgia, or Altamonte Springs, Florida. You can, if you're a Gold member, you can go. There's an opportunity to get like a grab bag, and then they give you discounts on merchandise, all these other things. So head to our site to get the link for that. Also on June 14th, there's an option to get just complimentary tickets if you're a Gold member. If you're in Chicago, Philadelphia, Salt Lake City, San Diego, or Boston, there's specific theaters again, though, so check out the link. Just crazy the amount of opportunities and listings they're getting people out there to want to see this. So that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I like how much they're, just saying, hey, go see it. Get out there. There's AMC's partnering with them, D23, so more and more. This I thought was a good lead-in to our interview.
Okay.
So about the house listing on Zillow.
I loved it.
Okay, what did you like about it?
I just loved everything. First off, so there's one scene that I already like wrote about it in a post like previously, about like the kitchen scene with Bob and the kids and stuff.
Violet,
and how he
yep.
said that like there was this one specific scene, and it's my favorite image that I've seen from like The Incredibles, and like one from like most like all of Pixar.
Yeah.
Not my favorite, but one of my favorite.
Yeah, it stood out to you. It was
stood out to
visually
me.
stunning.
It was just the the greenery in the background, like in the backyard, the lighting bouncing off, the reflections on the counter, the lighting that hits Jack's high chair, the different paint streaks on the cabinetry, just so much stuff in that scene. So I love that I could see images of the house
without the characters too. Yeah.
Because how I said in that, when I wrote about that post, is, wow, this looks like a live action shot with cartoon characters. And seeing that Zillow post was like, oh my gosh, this looks like a real place.
Yeah.
That I could go to.
Yeah.
And the master bedroom, I was like geeking out over that.
Yeah.
I think that is like,
it's super cool.
Phenomenally done.
Yep.
The wood grain on the walls, like the built-ins, is so like 60s, like just like mid-century, and I love it. And that artwork on the walls that was like just like, what is it? Like the detail and like the I'm trying to use, I can't think of the word. I'm trying to like just the different levels.
Okay, yeah.
It's just very textured. That's what I was looking for. And it was like a brass art piece, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I was like, I just thought that was very clever marketing.
It's a very clever marketing piece. And it tied perfectly. We were like, yes, when we were going to be releasing on the 31st, the morning of.
Right.
The early afternoon, the post that we did about designing the house. So that's like a breakout even more of the interview we're about to share, with pictures and images from the studio. So if you haven't checked that out, you're going to want to as well. There's also some quotes that I put in there from the Art of book, like one from Don Shank, when you said like you got geeked like looking at the rooms and everything, and where Don Shank said, I did some of the layout and set design of some of these rooms, and I imagine the scenes that are happening in the rooms, and then I figure, what do I really need in here? So he sees an empty room, and he's like, what do I need to put in here based on what I think they would be doing in this room? And then he said he gets so into it that he hates having to pass the project off, because he's like, in my head, I live there.
Oh yeah.
Because he gets so deep into it,
right,
that he's like, I live there. And that's one of the things you guys are going to hear in this interview, is just the ridiculous level of passion and dedication that, again, Ralph Eggleston, the production designer, Bryn Imagiri, the shading art director, Philip Metshan, the visual designer, and Nathan Ferris, the set supervisor, you're gonna hear that same passion coming out of them. you're going to hear these details, like you talked about that scene where you can see the light reflecting off the countertops. It's that terrazzo counter and flooring, and it's an aggregate material that everyone walks on, so it has to be very detailed. So there's layers upon layers upon layers. And there's just all these things that you'll hear them get into, all the nitty-gritty of the decisions they made, the research trips that they took to Palm Springs, Florida. And then, like I said, great descriptions of what a production designer does, the visual designer, and the set supervisor. That's the one, Nathan Ferris, is that you're really going to hear a lot of details. He breaks up the 5 subdivisions that are within that group, the sets group. So let's go ahead and play that interview and enjoy.
We're going to talk about how we built the world of the film. And we're going to start with some design and walk through the entire process all the way through previs and modeling. So the people that are talking this morning are me, I'm Ralph Eggleston, production designer. This is Brynn McGarry, art director for textures and also costume design. Philip Metchin, who's our director of previs, and Nathan Ferris, who is our director of sets. He kind of did everything. So made it all real. One of the things, what a production designer does and what an art director does is we design the overall look of the film and the specifics. And what we do is build corrals of information, visual information that we hope everyone can kind of understand and kind of contribute to. So the realms of things that we kind of influence are the character designs. We have to design our actors and the environments. Every part of the world that you see, nothing's free. It's all built from scratch. Props and dressing, and we just kind of organize a lot of it, and then work with sets to make sure that it can, they're brilliant at implementing it too. And costumes and the costume changes, textures throughout the entire film, and lighting. We don't, again, like with all of this, we're just the starting point. We have lots of other folks in other departments that influence this and work with us. So I've started this film 3 years ago, which is actually the second shortest film I've ever worked on at Pixar after Toy Story, which is only 2.5.
I only worked on 2 years.
On this? Yeah, that's
yeah.
right. We actually stole Brynn from Coco. She did Coco, and she was literally finishing, and then she jumped on to Incredibles 2 to help us out. So, but here's a really great example of some of the architecture that we had fun with mid-century. It's a really cool idea of mid-century mundane. That's not the coolest buildings, it's the stuff in between the coolest buildings of mid-century. So we used a lot of this in some of the design of the city of Municipburg.
And there's really, it's easy to find like colors and textures, palettes that are specific to mid-century design. So we sort of just picked up on those cues and used them throughout the film.
Yeah. It's actually easy to find really cool looking mid-century architecture. It's harder to find stuff that is less identifiable, little elements here and there like breeze blocks and repeated patterns and things like that. So it was a lot of fun. Photography of Ezra Stoller, among others. Different artists and different photographers and different designers influence us every step of the way. So the one thing I particularly appreciated about Ezra Stoller's photography was the world of The Incredibles is not about small, it's not about detail, it's about big in the medium, and the small details are really kind of the characters, and then the textures where we need them most to tell the story, and advance the story.
If there are no textures on anything, you'll know it will feel wrong.
Yeah. Safari Court is where the family has been living for 3 months, since the Manta jet was destroyed and what's his name, Syndrome died. So, yeah, 1 room motel they've all lived in for a long time, going a little bit stir crazy. And then those are some initial designs. And then Brynn would take this and...
Mm-hmm. And so we have to figure out sort of like what are the iconic textures of this time period. So there's a lot of grass cloth, a lot of mixture of material, like a lot of, in the Saarinen furniture, very sleek, very simple shapes. A lot of the fabrics are really nubbly and textured-y. So it was cool, to try to bring that into the film. It's a subtle thing, but it's a good way of bringing in a sense of style.
And again, lots of photo reference.
This was just to show, we have to think about global, like what is the mosaic on the side of the motel that we never see. And then up to the like egg rolls, on the Chinese food on the table.
Yeah. Then we actually, in the film you saw, in the clips you saw yesterday, you see the new Par home is 20,000 square feet home. That's the second home we built for the film. We actually finished an entirely different house. It was roughly, the house from the original film there, Eichler, was roughly 1,300 square feet. The house we built first for this film was 2,300 square feet. So it's a nice, large suburban home, but it wasn't quite enough. We're going to walk through some of the initial designs that we came up with. Brad wanted an arrow up, whereas the original film, it was kind of looking down. The poor family was kind of under duress. In this film, they're actually doing a little bit better, and he wanted an arrow up. The arrow up in the center actually started coming across as a home from the 40s, like a Levittown home, which I didn't feel like was very mid-century, even though it was a little. And I kept drawing rockets taking off. And Brad said, no, I don't know if I want that, so let's just kind of go with an arrow up. So we found ways of doing that, off-centering the arrow just a bit. And some great range, case study homes, Eames homes, reference. And this is the original designs for the first home. Philip's going to show you a previs walkthrough of that. We were in lighting, and we threw it all away.
I really love terrazzo floors, and so because it's such a big element in any kind of aggregate material in mid-century, they used like rocks embedded in grout or marble or stone. Terrazzo was a really expensive material back then, and today it would probably cost lots of money to make do it right. And so we felt like, because the house is so fabulous, we're going to put terrazzo everywhere. So that was kind of our inspiration. And this is just to show, we brought a lot of plants indoors. It's sort of that Eastern idea of bringing the outside inside. We're inspired by Frank Lloyd Wright. A lot of, glass that has etching on it so that when the light shines through, it's patterns. Details like that we have to think about.
Terrazzo, even in the computer, is expensive, as you'll see. Maybe it's up here. Actually, someone said yesterday you didn't say why you changed the house. I'm going to say why we changed the house. We had actually pitched the idea of a larger house earlier, and the story necessitated that they live in a more comfortable home. And what happened was, at a certain point, as Brad was writing, he needed to consolidate a number of sequences into one. And the only way he could do it was he wasn't sure how he was going to do it. He knew he had to do it. But then I pitched the idea of the larger house again, and something clicked. And he goes, yeah, I want to do it. And I'm like, wait, we just finished the other house. We're so ahead of the game. And it was worth it. It was worth it. It was worth it. But we had not very much. So we had about 8 months to do the first house. And so this is some of the first house designs. And then we scratched that. And the new Par home. And this is the initial concept. That's actually the first drawing I did, the rocket up on the upper left. And the idea was it's like a rocket, and the trees were kind of like the rocket blast smoke. And it's a great reference of houses on hills. And we, of course, went to Palm Springs and other places, but Palm Springs is a big inspiration because it's all just in one place, Lots of great reference.
Mm-hmm. We're looking at patterns by Alexander Gerard, a lot of Knoll furniture, Mies van der Rohe, a lot of natural materials like onyx. They used to do, at that time, there was a lot of contrast in textures, so, lush carpets, glossy marble, really dark, interesting woods, teak, rosewood, a lot of woods that they used back then we can't use anymore because it's starting to run out. That's why vintage, like Eames furniture made out of rosewood are super expensive because you can't make it out of that anymore. So, plants set dressing plants in interesting ways.
So we had, when we pulled the trigger to change the design of the house, which we had already had 8 months working on, we had two and a half weeks actually to redesign everything for the house you saw in the film. We had everyone on our team kind of do, I kind of said the first week everybody did whatever they wanted. And the second week I broke it into parts, exterior, interior, living room, bedroom. Bren was building little models. Everybody was just jamming, photo collage, whatever we could do to get something in front of the director to have him say, yes, do you want to do this or not? And if you want to do it, you better say yes now because we have no time left. So these are some terrific drawings by Kyle Mcnaughton, and this one's by Tony Kristoff and Don Shank. Kyle again. Philip Metchin took a lot of these and started roughing them out in previs, simple models in the computer. Bryn was doing really fast paintings to show some ideas of textures. And then approaching the house, we wanted it on a precipice of a hill. Kind of like James Mason's house in North by Northwest a bit. And then zeroing in, these are the key areas of the house somehow. There it is, sorry, wait, back up. There we go. This is the, entryway. You can see the terrazzo floors with the inlays.
I don't even know if you ever see it.
You do. There's a couple of shots.
We were looking at Harry Bertoia sculptures and using a lot of, the natural materials in lampshades like raffia, and just being inspired by abstract design in materials.
And we have the grand room, which is the main room of the house. This is the room that the family first sees, and of course it's a wild room, but it makes them very uncomfortable, of course, We were inspired a lot by Sunnylands in Palm Springs, where you have large rooms, but then it had a number of human-scaled rooms, which made people feel more comfortable.
I felt like this room was for color. It was like a palette of a canvas, and then the furniture was all sort of abstract shapes, and it was kind of mimicking those paintings we were seeing, but on like a large scale. We were looking at a lot of, where the furniture is kind of in a shape. So I tried to keep the colors as that in abstract shapes.
A lot of the larger elements are fairly neutral too, so that the furniture and other things were the art of the room. Really.
They're like accents, little color accents.
Kitchen area, we spend a lot of time in there. Really great materials for the kitchen. I mean, this is so much fun. There's so much reference on mid-century everything, This is Bob's Den. We once spent more time in here. Again, the water running through every room was just an annoyance to them. At first it was so cool, and then it's just an annoyance.
I still like it.
I mean, I love it too. The bottom of the swimming pool is the top of the den. That's in the film. We had a great mural that was designed by Bren. It's going to be
the mosaic.
There it is on the left.
And then we never see
We never see it. We did a lot of that on this show. On the master bedroom. One of the things that had next on top of it was an observatory at one point. We had a blast doing this though. And then actually making it work for the film was the pain,
The cool thing about working with Brad is that he always wants it to be the best and most awesome.
The best and most everything.
Yeah.
And then it's one of the things we wanted to do on this film is kind of set it in place as though it were real and only cheat when we absolutely had to. And that was very frustrating for him because in animation you can do anything, but there's still a cost to that as well. And we had not a lot of time to get this film up and running, so we kind of held his feet to the fire on that. I kept saying it was no cheating. Again, it doesn't mean we didn't cheat, we did, but we tried to keep it to a minimum. And we thought through we don't have to build everything. We built a lot on this film, Nathan will tell you that. But we have to understand it all. That was really the key thing. This is the exterior of the house. And Nathan will show you a lot of the elements, like the table and chairs back there. And even in the kitchen, were lifted from the first house that we built, and we had to very carefully rearrange it.
We were inspired by Wally Lamb, no.
And Lawrence
Walter
Halprin.
Lamb. Yeah, lots of architects. This is a house in an area of LA. It's amazing. But you can tell that they always were using very bold geometric shapes. So we tried to use that again in this film.
And Phil was going to show you some more previous, but this is the actual house and all of the sets within it. And then, of course, one of the other fun things we got to do is graphics. Our graphics art director was Josh Hawksclaw, and another gentleman, Paul Conrad, helped us out quite a bit too. It really helped set the tone for a lot of the scenes, and of course, DevTech, you know. And this is actually a design for Edna Mode's bags, you know, her actual business on the side. This design was done by Tony Fucilli. And then nothing is for free, like we were saying. We had to build everything and texture everything and work with lots of folks. And then one of the things, you know, we kind of do is initial lighting studies to make sure that, hey, this is where we're going. So hopefully, if we're able to do these soon enough, everyone can kind of start seeing what's most important to work on, and in some cases, what's not as important to work on in terms of detail. Very inspired by Richard Mattis's cinematography for Douglas Sirk. And next up is Philip Metchin.
Hello, everyone. So my name's Philip Metchin. I was the previs lead on the film, and some people do know what previs is, but others don't. So I'm just going to give kind of a quick introduction to what it is we do. When I started on the film, I kind of explained it to the producers of what we were going to be doing with this, is building really simple models that we were okay with losing and doing a lot of iteration on. But basically, previs is just a fancy name for prototyping something quickly in the computer. Primary reason we do this is because collaboration is key to our process, and it's important that everybody is on the same page about what we're looking at. And so as soon as we can get Ralph's designs and the team's designs into 3D, it's in the same language that everybody in the production looks at to get to the final film. I kind of look at it this way: this is kind of what we don't want to do, which is a bunch of departments circling around their own ideas. Instead, what we decided was this was a much better way to do it, which is what we have: story, art, and camera and layout, which also includes kind of sets, looking and responding to the same thing, which we call the world. But we do need to start somewhere. So generally in our business, we start with storyboards, but this is just a group of storyboards that are from the new house, drawn by several different story artists, and they're drawing the house in a bunch of different ways based on how they're interpreting things that Brad's put in the script. It's our job to kind of bring that all together. So we'll start with maps, kind of map out where the action goes, and try and figure out where the characters need to be at certain times and what kind of angles the storyboards are trying to show. Combine that with all the great design work and all the different ideas. Again, the idea here is to try and iterate in previs in 3D as much as possible by combining all these ideas and seeing how they all come together. So we like to think of it as working really rough and iterating on that rough, because when we get down the pipe to the fine stuff that Nathan will show you, that's not when we want to be making new houses. We want to make a new house and then another one. So traditionally, this is kind of the fidelity that a previs model will have. You can see that it does have a lot of what Ralph has put in there. It has some of what the storyboards are showing, and we've carefully kind of worked out all the places that the action happens in, but this is still a very flexible asset from a design perspective. We can change it, in a matter of days or hours to deal with different things that have come up in the story. So there's just another view from the back of the house. And then one of the first passes at the interior spaces. We're trying to figure out scale. We're trying to figure out the character of it. We're trying to get some idea of how the characters actually feel in this space and if it's achieving what we want it to achieve story-wise. We can also use these models to produce maps that go up all over the production so everybody knows if someone's running from one place to the other and we're trying to pick up action at the pool or in the den. So now that we have something that we can all look at and is the same, we can all start to collaborate a little stronger because we're talking about the same thing. So Story will then take screenshots of the work that I do and introduce it back into their boards. So now when we're doing story reviews, Brad's essentially seen the shots that he wants in the film, but he's seen it on the set that we are starting to put together and solidify. And we can still make changes at this point, and then Story can respond in their boards with it. We also take the previs, and it helps produce model packets and lighting studies. The whole concept here is that the confidence in the final design is able to be tested before we send it on to more expensive processes. We also get to produce these real estate kind of type videos where Brad can actually see the spaces and imagine, how he's going to be shooting in here. The one thing I want to mention about this is this idea of the new and the new house. Since that change occurred after we had already done so much work on this one of the nice things about Previs was that we were able to we had actually shot some scenes and sequences in this house with camera angles and characters and them having dinner together. And what we were able to do is actually lift completely a lot of that camera work and that layout and composition work and put it into the new house and arrange the new house spaces so that all that work wouldn't have to be completely redone. Pillow Talk was a sequence that we did, very complex camera setups. And Nathan had mentioned yesterday, it reminded me that the bed in this house and the new house and actually in the hotel are all the same, essentially the same size. So we could lift all that camera work and all that character work and into the other houses and preserve it. So we like doing this so much that we decided to do it for every set and every major prop on the film. This is just kind of a thumbnail view of all the stuff that we tested out, all the previous sets, some that made it, some that didn't, but that's what we did.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nathan Ferris. Am currently still the set supervisor. They haven't fired me yet. So we just learned a bit about kind of the why and the what of the film, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of the how. And so I led the sets department on the film as a team of about 50 or so people, and we're the ones that kind of take a lot of the amazing concept work, like the reference and the model packets and the previs, and we turn it into the environments and things that you see in the film. Now, what does the set department do? We make a lot of stuff. We make all the props, we make the architecture both inside and out, we make all the vehicles, we make all the vegetation. We don't make it move, but we make the vegetation, and we do skies and set extensions as well. Essentially, the sets department is a collection of 5 kind of sub-departments. We have modeling, set dressing, shading, set extensions, skies is one group together, and then sets tech. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what each one of these actually means. So modeling, they're the sort of the sculptors, the upholsterers, the car mechanics, the folks that make all the stuff, all the 3-dimensional shapes that you see in the film. And in a lot of cases, the computer's really good at making straight lines. It's super simple, 2 points, straight line right through it. And so we end up having to spend a lot of time trying to make the world feel a little more natural and a little more real by pulling those points around, basically disrupting all the straight lines that you see. In the world of The Incredibles, this is a very subtle thing because mid-century design is very all about straight lines, big, broad shapes. It's not about wiggly things and a lot of crunchy detail like something like Coco is. So this is something that is we have to be very careful about as we go. That process you just saw has to be done in everything. Every single thing, every chair, every stool, every other chair, every lamps, candelabras, toasters, trees, pots and pans, bikes, radio towers, all of these things have to be made by what was essentially a team of about 10 people or so on this film. And each one is made by hand. We do get a little bit of reuse film to film. Sometimes we can pull props from past films and save ourselves a little time there, but for the most part, each film has its own unique look, and we have to make things that are unique to that film, especially in this one where the design is so big a part of the film. All of these things, they all take a long time to make, but they're all disconnected. They're just a bunch of stuff. It's essentially a warehouse full of random things. You go, look at a shelf and you have stuff that doesn't make any sense. You've got big empty, spaces with nothing in them, empty apartments, empty houses, that sort of thing. And that's where the set dressing folks come in. And there's actually a good deal of overlap in the people that do these two jobs. We have a lot of what we call model dressers, where they can both model a set and put it together. But set dressing, what they really do is they arrange all the stuff. They take all of those random props that are essentially disconnected and all of those empty spaces and are able to turn those into a full restaurant with food on the table and menus and that sort of thing. And then when someone decides that we don't want paper placemats in our restaurant because that means we'd have to soak them with water at some point, then they're also the ones that have to get rid of all those things again. They fill up all the spaces with the furniture, and they also fill it up with the essential story point objects as well, when there's things that need to tell a little bit of a mood of a scene, such as a sink full of dirty dishes or breakfast set for the kids in the morning. They have to do all that stuff. They also do kind of the architecting for downstream departments on a technical level. They've set it up so that all of our chunks of the house are connected and split up into separate pieces so that lighting and animation and layout and everybody downstream from us can work with those things in a piece-by-piece basis, and it's not a one giant house full of stuff. It's, if we're only having a scene in the master bedroom, you only load the scene, that amount of the set, that sort of thing. Then come the shading folks, and they're the ones that kind of take all of those things that we just put in there and have already modeled and give it a lot of the color and texture and reflections and the qualities of how each object reacts to light. They take our marble and make it shiny, and the enameled, cabinets there, and make them kind of a little bit semi-gloss, and the terrazzo floor. Each little piece has a different amount of reflectivity. There, the cloth shading can be really coarse like burlap, or very fine like silk, or velvety like the seats that you're all on right now. Like that stuff is all aspects of the shading that we can control. On the elastocycle, we have a wide variety of materials all stuffed into one prop here. And we've got the rubber on the the tire has little speckles of stuff stuck in it as though it was rolling on a real road. The leather has all of the nice grain to it. If you look at the highlight on the fender, it's got the orange peel from the kind of CG spray gun that it was painted with, and the laser pointer. The upper fork here has got the little turn marks as though it was hand-built on a lathe. All of these things, we have to pay attention to every last detail, because especially on an object like this, we see it from every angle. We see it up close, we see it from far away, and we want it to feel natural and real and not pull anyone out of the story. We want it to be like a real awesome motorcycle. Now, Bryn mentioned the terrazzo flooring earlier, and it's something that it's what everybody walks on and so many of the sets of the film, and it's such a mundane thing that it actually, I figured it was worth mentioning, because it's actually a fairly complex surface for us to make. It is an aggregate material in the real terrazzo, and it's different chunks of marble and stone and various things all poured together with filler material, and it's ground down smooth. And so what you end up with is each little square is a different kind of stone. For our purposes, when we build that in the shading, we start with a number of different textures that you see over there on the right, the different kinds of stone. And these are just two-dimensional photographs of stone, that sort of thing. And then our shading artist who did this, Ben Beach, he made this colorful texture here, which allows us to assign those textures differently to different colors, so that what we do is we layer this thing up, and this is kind of our base filler stone, and then we start layering in some of those other textures using that kind of party-colored map. One more there, but of course this is now, it's just a flat color. Doesn't look like a floor, it just looks like a speckledy rock. So we start adding in reflections, and then using those same textures that we're using for color, we also can add a little bit of displacement, a little bit of breakup on the reflections, and make it feel like each piece of that rock is reflecting light in a slightly different manner. We also then add on a little bit of dirt to make it feel a little bit more lived in, and because of the way terrazzo is poured, we add these little metal things here, because it's poured in big squares to make it feel like a real floor. And then we can also then change those textures out if we need green flooring, or if we want it to be a mixture of light and green. And that is how we end up with something like what we've got Jack sitting on right here. So that's kind of a little bit about the world that's close to us. Now, the set extension and disguise folks, they deal with the world that's far away. It's the big part of the world, the big cities in the background, the big broad skies, that sort of thing. When I started on this film about 2 years ago or so, there was a lot of talk about cities. And from a set's perspective, a city is a terrifying thing. As anyone who has been and walked through a city, if you've ever seen a city, there's a lot of stuff in a city. There's thousands of buildings, there's millions of people, and each person has an effect on that space, and there's so much complexity in a city that it is an overwhelming thing to consider in our world, because we have to build all that stuff. It's just so much stuff has to be built and arranged and aged and weathered, and it has to be treated in a way that makes it feel normal, because so many people, there's so many things that, from a filmmaking perspective, you just inherently know if it's wrong. And a city is one of those things, because we see it all the time, and you just know if it's not right. And so we don't want that to happen in the middle of a movie, because we're trying to watch a fun movie and be absorbed in the story. So we took it upon ourselves in Incredibles 2 to not be afraid of the cities. And so in an area like this, where you just see the city from far away, you can usually just do a matte painting. You just paint the city out there, looks great, you don't have to worry about it. Except in our film, we see the same city of Munisipburg here in so many different ways. We see it from above, we see it from down in the city, we see it all over the place. And so we decided it would be worth taking the time to build a real three-dimensional city that we could put in all over the place. So we've got suburbs, we've got manufacturing districts, we've got our downtown area, and we've got kind of an old town across the river there. And then when you turn around, you can see where the powerhouse is located on that kind of brown hillside over there. This is just our kind of screen capture, not a real rendering, but you get an idea of what's actually out there. And so we can see this, we can use this same set extension for so many different purposes throughout the film, and the same with New Urbum as well. We have another one of these for that city. The skies actually use a lot of the technology from The Good Dinosaur, and they have kind of a nice set of clouds that they developed for that film. A lot of really groundbreaking cloud work was developed on a technical side for that, and we keep using some of that. And so they arrange all of these clouds in a three-dimensional space, and then they kind of deliver to the lighting department a nice key light, a little bit of fill light, and then a nice backdrop for that, and that gets layered in for every single shot, and that needs to be done for every sequence. Usually every sequence has a unique sky setup built for it, and then it's rendered out shot by shot. There's a bit of work, and this is often done by the set dressing folks we talked about earlier, where we fine-tune so much stuff on a shot-by-shot basis. So it would be really awesome if we could just deliver, here's your house, make your movie in your house, good luck, and then be done with it. But the reality is, there's a lot of work. That's what happens when we deliver here's a winding road through the hills, and it's got a bunch of trees on it, and then they figure out where's the best curve to shoot the limo driving along this, and then we realize, there's a weird kind of watermelon texture on the ground, and we've got a couple trees, and this isn't going to cut it. And so we have to do a shot-by-shot tuning and add in grass and stones and more bushes and better trees, and frame our Munisipburg in the background a little bit better, and work on our road shading and tune this all up so that it looks just right for the film. And sometimes it's broad like that, where we really have to do a lot of work in a single shot. Like this, if you actually watch through the steps here, you can actually see this is also while we were developing our Munisipburg set extension. But sometimes we just do a little bit of framing, like these trees that you're seeing here and here, to kind of round out this shape and draw the eye into the middle and get that together. And other times it's just little subtle stuff. Like here they're just sitting by the pool, it's a quiet moment, and just to add a little bit of reality, we just throw a couple dead leaves in the pool here for just a little bit of texture. So sets tech, they're kind of the unsung heroes of the sets department. They're the folks that do a lot of coding, they do a lot of support, they kind of keep everything running, the big machine that is the sets department. They're the ones that keep it all running, and they're also the ones that take away all the stuff that we put in there. As an example, I think you all saw the Stop the Tunneler sequence last night, is that right? Up here in the corner, that's the sequence as it is in the film. Down here is what we call a 360 render, and that is a 360-degree camera that sees the whole world, and that little red square in the middle is the frame. And so you can see all the stuff that's missing outside of the frame. And so what the sets tech folks do is what we call pruning, and they just basically everything that's not specifically needed for that exact shot, it gets taken away. It's turned off so that you don't have to run it through the pipeline. We don't have to render it. It's not in memory. It's not taking up space on the, on our server farm, any of that kind of thing. And so this is done on a shot-by-shot basis. For most shots, it's about every 5th frame, something like that. And then sometimes if there's a lot of fast motion, we have to tune that a little bit differently, but you probably noticed there's all kinds of stuff that turns on and off in the process, like cars disappear, crowds disappear, all kinds of things turn on and off as they enter frame, that sort of deal. Bob's doesn't have legs in some shots, things like that. And all that stuff, all that camera dressing, all of that pruning, all of these things get done for about 2,200 shots in the whole film. And that is Creating the World's Incredibles 2. I think we're a couple minutes over. Anybody back there, do we have time for questions?
Yeah, okay, a couple questions.
Yeah, nobody says no, so how about a question? Okay.
Yeah.
How long did it take to build the 3D version of the city, Municipal?
That is a difficult question to answer because what that is actually using is it's using our real buildings, and we spent, I would say, probably a good solid 6 months or so of just 1 or 2 people working on the kind of technical underpinnings of that. I mean, it's a big procedural system that if we want it to, it'll put stop signs at every corner, parking meters, it can put parked cars in there, it can really build out a lot of stuff for that case that we just showed in here. Obviously there was no cars, no parking meters because it was so far away we didn't need that in that particular shot. But we did build out this system that can do that thing, those sorts of things if we needed. But what it does is it pulls the models from our model catalog that we're using everywhere else. So as that was being developed, we also have the modeling folks making all those buildings and all the parking meters and the cars and all that sort of stuff. So, combined effort, calendar time probably 6 months to a year worth of actual work in there, but that work is also amortized across the entire show because we use that stuff everywhere. Go ahead.
Is there any thought or ambition to use the 360 tool to develop a way to kind of experience the movie in VR, so that way you can look around wherever any of the scenes in the movie are happening, be on the Underminer's drill or on the monorail while the sequences are happening and experience the entire world that you guys have created?
I don't know. I don't think that, for our purposes, what you saw last night is our goal. Now, if there are other branches of Pixar doing that sort of thing, your guess is as good as mine. Go ahead.
That's their budget.
When you do a sequel, what's the percentage of stuff that can be carried over from the first movie? Or is it really just starting at ground zero?
Virtually none. Actually, design-wise, yes. E's house, we saw a lot more of. I worked with Phil, and we actually went from the basement all the way to the rooftop and everything inside and outside the house, and then it got tossed. So what you see in the film is kind of similar to what we saw in the previous film. And then the design process, character design, that took a long time on the original film. And we had them with this, but none of the actual assets where we had to. It's been 14 years. The technology's so much better, and the artistry of the people is so much better. Yeah.
There were a few things that where there is overlap, like the stadium for Dasher's track meet and the parking lot outside and the Underminer driller. Those things we started with some of those, but they essentially need to be rebuilt because the technology is different enough, and the fundamental underpinnings of how the images are rendered has changed enough that things that worked really well then don't work at all now. So we have to rebuild a lot of that stuff. And in some cases, like the Underminer driller, in the first film, it's actually 5-sided. It's got 5 treads on it, kind of in a star pattern. And for the purposes of that film, it looks cool. It comes in, bursts out of the ground, lands, that's it. That's as much as it needs to do. Whereas our film, we go inside it, we have to drive it down the road. And what we found in initial testing, we tried some things out, like can we drive this 5-sided thing down the road? And the answer was no. It's basically, it was sort of like an overweight dachshund in that it was just dragging its belly on the ground. It doesn't function for what we needed, so we had to redesign that to make it 6-sided, redesign little ways for the treads to come out and be plausibly driving down the street, so that all that stuff that you just saw, so Bob can grab onto the tread and nose run flat on the street and that sort of thing. So even in cases where it seems like, well, it should be the same thing, but we have to kind of rethink it because its purposes are totally different from a story.
We're actually all huge fans of the original film, so some of that work was a lot of the fun part, was actually figuring out like the tunneler inside and out, and Municeburg as a map, like it as a real place, because in the original film it wasn't as fleshed out, and it was I don't know if some of it was a matte painting, right?
A lot of it.
But we actually had to go in there and dig up some of the original artwork and build those cities based on that legacy information. So
We built the city working from the original film backwards.
Yeah.
We looked at shots, knowing that, I knew a city didn't exist. It was just like whatever fits in this shot. And that's the kind of stuff I referred to earlier when I said no cheating. In that film, we could, and we could still do this. We can cheat every shot, but then it has to be accounted for. Where the effects might be a different scale on every shot. Well, we can't afford to redo the effect on every shot at a different scale anymore. And we were moving so fast on this show when we switched places with Toy Story 4 in terms of release. Just, it happens a lot. But we had a year less time suddenly. So we really took advantage of that no cheating clause to kind of make sure that we could do this. But one of the other things we did that was interesting was, as you watch the film, we intentionally, and I hope I'm using this the right way, kind of withheld what we can do now technically at the beginning of the film a bit, all the way up to the moment the Underminer vehicle goes back underground. That's where we kind of kick into high gear. When it comes back above ground, it's like everything we can do now. So we always imagine the midnight screening of the first film leading into this film, and we didn't want an immediate jump. We wanted to kind of pull back and let's just hold back and make it look more like the original film, and then ease into what we can do now and find moments in the film where the audience isn't going to notice. So.
I think we have run out of time, though, so thank you for starting your morning with us, and enjoy your day at Pixar.
Well, thank you very much. I absolutely did enjoy my day at Pixar.
You always do.
And I hope you enjoyed that interview. So some of the things that stood out to me, I guess some of the things that are right at the end that were like, oh, cool, when we started asking questions in the audience. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was really awesome that what they did was intentionally hold back technology-wise and animation-wise how good they could make the film look when it first started.
Right.
Because, like Ralph says, we always had this vision that a midnight screening of the first film leading into this film, and we didn't want an immediate jump of, the technology and the look. So
I actually think that's very smart. It's
extremely smart. So it's not so jarring.
Uh-huh.
And he said, we switched it to, a higher level whenever the Underminer would either come up or go down below the ground.
Right.
And it's just so cool to think every time, because then there's going to be an explosion. So then your mind is watching the explosion. It's like a magic trick. It's like sleight of hand.
Right.
Change it around when they're not looking. But I thought that was so cool to kind of crossfade the technology a little bit.
I do too.
Yeah. And then the other portion of it that really stood out to me, and I mentioned this already, that, when I was at the event, I loved everybody's discussion because I love just getting all those detailed information, and so happy that we could share it out with everybody. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, when I was editing and listening back to Nathan's portion, that's what really stood out to me, because I was like, wow, not only the pacing of how he's delivering the information, but the visuals that were on the screen. And again, sorry, I can't share those. But just the clarity, the of breaking down the sub-departments, and I was like, wow, yeah, I get it. Connections, making connections. So, but anyways, I got excited listening to that and having him describe the sets department and the intricate details they do. Of course, that doesn't mean that my love for the lighting team or animation departments has gone away or has lessened in any way, but it's just gaining more layers of respect for the other teams.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, I know you feel that same way as far as when you're at the events and you're like, wow, you're just picking all that stuff up.
Yeah, well, hey, we've talked about it before. I, love the story team, but I have a feeling I am going to want to join the theme parks division
after you go to Toy Story Land.
Soon. Yes.
Yeah. there was other stuff that I thought was just genius, as far as like Philip Metshan saying that he and Mayar Abasaidi were in his office and trying to figure out how they could, all of a sudden when they got told that they were no longer going to be using the first house that they designed for The Incredibles, and they were going to be doing this new house, as they call it, and they had 2.5 weeks to get it done.
2.5 weeks, and the first one took what
8 months? Yeah, and they were ahead of schedule when they got that first house done. So what it was, I just like the fact that they looked at it and said, okay, it's bigger, it's different, but how can we lay everything out in the same way that we don't have to redo all the camera shots too?
Right.
I mean, it's just like, that's all that deep creative thinking that I just adore and get into, you know, as far as when people have to do that. So I thought that was just great to hear those too. So, like I said, every time I hear one of these, I walk away a little more dumbfounded and just amazed at how much passion and energy all these artists and teams put into these projects. And, you know, you'll hear throughout all these interviews that we're going to continue to share how they had this crunch for time, and because they swapped places with Toy Story 4 because it needed a little more development, and Incredibles 2 was further along in the story process, so they said, sure. Brad Bird's like, sure, I can do it. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just like, I love that. Like, that they come together and they have this passion that they can share with us. So, anyways, we hope you enjoyed the interview. We hope you get to see one of the early screenings of the film. And as soon as you see it, let us know what you think. Let us know your ratings, like on a 1 to 10, or if you want to expound a little more, go into the forum. Whatever it is, we want to hear about it. So, what do you think? Does that about wrap up this episode?
I think so.
All right. Well, be sure to follow us on all of our social media channels, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Pinterest, or subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Overcast, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Lastly, if you like today's show, let us know. Rate us on iTunes, leave a comment on our site, or send us an email, info@pixarpost.com. That's where you can also send us your reviews of the film. All right, well, signing off as usual, I'm TJ.
And I'm Julie.
And be sure to stay tuned to PixarPost.com all week for the latest Pixar news. Bye-bye.